Hi there! Today we are modeling this hair for my kid's VRoid model. Now in VRoid there is a base hair. We're starting with a bald model though because the base hair can't be edited, so we can't get the nice separated bases for twists by messing with it. We could model sections coming up out of the head, but for this I'm actually just going to draw the sections onto the image textures. I'll keep our polygon count low if nothing else. The hairline is within two textures. The face texture, which is at the bottom of the face editor panel, that's the one that you're seeing right now. And you can draw directly on it with VRoid Studio's built-in image editor. And then the body texture at the bottom of the body editor panel, well, it's really the only one there. You want the bottom center of the image for the back of the neck and head. And they do have different resolutions on both textures, so the pen will be bigger by default when you're drawing on the back of the head versus the front of the head. Just be careful about lining up your seams, especially if you're using an external image editor. Pre-draw if you plan to do that, and don't forget the mirror tool is there like I did. Alright, so there are a couple of ways to do hair. One is procedural group generation, which makes hair groups for you that can be adjusted via sliders to all kinds of neat configurations. You can change colors and textures. Just remember that default highlights work like an add layer, so if you turn it black, it goes away. If you want to make them duller, you just make them darker. Adjusting the amplitude lets you curl the hair, and the highlight will follow the twisting shape. Keep smoothness as low as you can without sacrificing shape, since more polygons usually translates to more load times and lag. The biggest issue I have with the default highlight is that it can't be edited. And if you do use textures that aren't the default, it can look really weird. To get a good tight curl texture, you will have to draw it yourself, or you can feel free to use my scribbly ones I'm linking in the video description. I have a few presets with different sections for different transparencies based on which way is top or bottom for a given section. For this video, I only needed one texture, but I made a Miku costume for this model already and ended up using all three configurations, which I have examples of also linked in the video description. Alright, last thing on textures. To be able to recolor it, you will have to make sure that your texture is very light or white because it applies your colors over the texture. Black will just absorb everything, like hair dye. So you can set the alpha on it to static and draw white over it. It's easy, easy, easy. You can also change the texture parameters for the width of the pattern, where it sits on the model, where the highlight goes. Interesting, the highlight placement actually moves the entire texture vertically, so up and down, which means you can use it to further shorten the hair or do other interesting things with the texture placement. As you can see, this is a very versatile and interesting function that has limited use for a lot of us, but I'm sure someone will come up with something really creative to do with this. And I like all of these colors. Yep. It's a good idea to use your textures, especially when you're trying to get the shape of the hair, or the base color and the shade color, to sort of delineate where each piece of hair is. I like purple, so we're going to do that. The placement mesh is where all the hair sits, I'm sure you've noticed. Lots of parameters like hairline can change where they sit on it. If you want the hair to look like it's coming out of the head, you will have to move the mesh itself partially inside the head like that. Procedural groups actually work super well if you want to make a lot of hair fast, or if you want a bunch of identical pieces. But because it's hard to line up to pre-made guides, I am actually going to use the other way that we can draw in hair, which is freehand. As the name suggests, with freehand, you can just draw the hairs in. Make sure you toggle mirroring on and off as needed for center and asymmetrical pieces. But like procedurally generated hair, it moves on the mesh, so you will have to bring sections of the mesh inside the head to make the pieces look like they're coming out when you put them in. Draw short strokes. Always draw short strokes. In my experience personally, it's much easier to move fewer points around and then use retouching for extra smoothing. So if you draw short strokes and move the points around using the tool on the bottom here, even for very long hair, to get the placement first, it will save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches because you aren't moving 30 dots. You're just moving 4 or 5. And then you can add more dots for smoothness. Full disclosure, real quick, making the hair come out of the head like this does mean that you need a new mesh and a new hair group for higher or lower sections. Usually, making a new group with the old one selected will duplicate your mesh, so the area that the hairs are typically drawn on. And if you want a similar shape each time, that's pretty convenient. You're about to see that here. They hit new one, and it pulled up the default. And you just move everything down so that when you draw it on, it comes out of the head the way it's supposed to. You can also duplicate a group and move copies of everything that you already made into place, which is a great option if you have weird parameter settings that you don't want to type in and adjust for every new group. For the top part of the head, the mesh can get a little bit weird, which you will see in a second. Depending on the angle and size you want the hair to exit the head at, you might have or try making a little V shape like I do up there so that it pulls the root down and back up and the thickness comes out at the space that I want. Right. And then you apply the final texture, which is what I'm doing here. If you can't apply a texture to a group, you can just do it to the individual pieces. Works just fine. Do whatever final adjustments that you have to make after you can see how it looks with your final texture, if you had a placeholder for visibility like I did. And I actually didn't require a whole lot of editing with this one. I was very pleased, frankly, with the way it turned out. We're going to go on to boning. So hair bones are the things that let the hair move while the character is running or dancing or just otherwise moving. For sectioned hair like this, the big groups of hair, the twists, groups should probably be either the single twists or very small groups of twists that would sensibly move together. Tightly coiled hair like this that we're modeling means that you'll want to use fewer bones so the hair retains some of its stiffness. If you have a lot of hair, you can use the bone generator at the bottom of the panel to have a bunch pre-done for you and edit their parameters and add the rest of the boning as needed. I only used 1 or 2 bones in almost all of those. The best way to test the boning is via poses and wind. My favorite way to check how hair falls in actuality is to pose the model like it's falling so you can see how hair comes off the neck and the back of the head. The scarf here is also technically hair. The hair drawing engine in VRoid can make all kinds of accessories, but they're all mapped to the head, so they'll move when it moves. And you'll have to use another 3D program like Blender, say, to detach them if you're making things below the top of the mouth, basically. The back ones were obviously boned. You can see them swaying in the wind, the bits of the scarf at the back. And you can also see these lines here in the very front that come through the brown skin color lines that come through the front hair. And that's because it's actually clipping through the forehead. This is very easily fixed by either moving the mesh so the hair sits farther out or adjusting the texture so you can't see that bit through the front. Now, I actually ended up doing both a little after I finished recording for this video, and it worked really well. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. Just double check your animations, double check how the model looks when it moves, when it spins. You'll want to go back in and adjust settings like gravity and stiffness before you settle down too hard. Definitely get the physics right, because that's going to be a huge deal for your model looking good. And you can carry those settings over to other programs as long as you have the necessary import framework. So it makes your life easier. I think that's everything for now. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching.